All right,
This meeting is being recorded.
Loud message there. All right, we are live here. It says we are recording, right? Perfect. And welcome. This is the first live Eminus Mirus class that I have taught since the beginning of the pandemic. I've had the Shadow Ethan days in between and other little classes in between, taught about hormones. So a little bit of theory here and there, but this is the first kind of core curriculum class and that I've taught in the last, I don't know, since 2019, I guess. And we're gonna start at the beginning. And for those people who are higher than M level 1, I'll be teaching classes mostly consecutively with some breaks in between to go through the entire curriculum, which is gonna take months because M is a very full alternative medicine. What is M? So Eminus Mirus, it is Latin for astonishing at a distance. And so basically, whether you are treating next to someone or treating 1,000 miles away, it is astonishing at a distance. We're not putting anything in people's bodies outside of energy, and we're not even doing it ourselves. We're using a principle that is also shared actually with Reiki, but this goes back to Chinese medicine. This goes back between 3,000 to 6,000 years ago, a principle called universal qi. And universal qi is actually the mechanism and bridge that is sending the treatment. So Eminus Mirus is a methodology to manipulate other people's energy on their behalf to bring them into balance. And it is a standardized methodology because the goal from the very beginning was to create something that we could use again and again and again with standardized results. It is, at its core, Eminus Mirus is just about resolving suffering. And I think we could all agree with the Buddhists when they say life is suffering, maybe not totally agree in every way. I also believe life is everything. It's not just suffering, but it certainly includes suffering. And I have said to some people that the suffering serves you in a certain way. And I don't mean that in the sense that you are being punished by universal qi and that's why you need to use Eminus Mirus or some other methodology to get out of your suffering. Your suffering is an opportunity every time you suffer to apply the principles of Eminus Mirus, to see those principles in action and to heal as best as you can with this methodology. The goal here is for you to see that you can intervene every time you have some amount of suffering. And Eminus Mirus may fully resolve it, and it may do so very quickly, or it may take time, or it may not even touch it. So I'm not out here saying that it is a cure-all for all things, but I am gonna say that it is very effective for a lot of things. And it really, what I want you to take away from today is when you have some amount of suffering, that should be seen as an opportunity to see what you can do with M. How you would use the principles and theory behind M to intervene and see if you can change it. You know, and like I said, we all have, if we're lucky enough to go through the aging process, we're all gonna have some amount of suffering. We're gonna have aches and pains. Literally 3 days ago, I woke up and my wrist was in pain and I had no reason for it. I just woke up that way. I'm sure you all have had that experience. As we're aging, those of us who have wrinkles show up, well, it's an opportunity to see, can M get rid of wrinkles? If your vision is getting less clear, it's an opportunity to see what can M do to get rid of, to sharpen the vision. You stub your toe, what can M do to help resolve that discomfort as quickly as possible? So M is really at its core an intervention against suffering. And we all have suffering, and every day there's something that I can treat in myself. And I suspect you will have the same situation where there's always something that you can treat in yourself as well. And what I want to just emphasize is that you don't need to be deep about it. You don't need to be processing all the theory that it comes with M. And for those people who are more than M level 1, you know, with M level 2, you get a little bit more theory. You get a 350-page curriculum book. With M level 3, you get thousands of pages of curriculum, and that's true for M level 4 as well. So you don't need any of that. You can go right into the treatment without having to think about much at all. And that's really one of the great things that M level 1 can remind us about, those of us who've been practicing M for a long time, is you don't have to be cerebral about it. You could just go right into it and say, okay, I have an achy elbow. Please send M to my elbow to stop the aching. Authenticated. It could be that simple. We don't have to go through all the meridians. We don't have to go through any Chinese medicine. We don't have to know anything about anatomy. It's so easy to apply this very basic send M methodology, which is also found in every level of M. It just gets stronger each level. So before I get too far in, I just want to say my name is Ethan Borg. Thank you for coming to this class. Some of you are new faces to me, and I'm a new face to you, and I thank you for joining us. Many of you aren't. Many of you I've seen for not just a few years, but going back 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, even 10 years. M is 10 years old now. Some of you are just so passionate about this that you are open to taking M level 1 classes, even though you're M level 4, and you've listened to me drone on for hours of your life, and thank you. But you're back again for more, and that's because this is a really fun tool. And people who get into it really get into it. They get sucked into how cool it is. And I just want a show of hands for how many people have been practicing M 7, 8, 9, 10 years now. And okay, just keep your hand up, because I'm going to go through. I have multiple pictures here, I want to capture my recording here. I got a lot of hands up. I have at least, gosh, I'd say at least 50%, maybe close to 50% of hands are up, of people who've been practicing this for more. Thank you for keeping your hands up. You don't have to anymore. Who've been practicing this for almost a decade, and you're back for more theory because it's fun. And this is a community. And so I just want to remind you that as a community, you get to ask me questions, and not just hear me drone on about my own outline here, but in the chat box, you can get to that chat box if you're new to Zoom, which it's hard to imagine that any of us are new to Zoom after 3 years of this pandemic. But if you are, there's a chat box at the bottom. If you hit that, you'll see I posted a question. What questions did you wish I answered when you first learned M level 1? And I'm happy to answer your questions. So one of the things I want to emphasize is that I wrote 15 books, 15 curriculum books for you. You are the living embodiment of Eminus Mirus. This whole medicine is you. It was literally created by Universal Chi for you. And one of the things that I want to emphasize today is that 1, you're awesome. 2, that you are worthy. And 3, that you are capable. That this has really been brought to you to use. And you may be the only generation that practices M. And people might hear that and think, you wrote thousands and thousands of pages of curriculum. Is that upsetting at any level that I'm only going to bring this maybe to one generation? And the answer is not at all. You are the reason why I'm here, and your passion is the reason why I'm teaching this whole curriculum again. That is why I'm here. I'm here to help you raise your game to the level that you want to be, if you want that level to be brought to, whatever that level is. But there's some fundamentals that we didn't talk about the first time I taught M level 1. Oh, and I want to just say that if this is your first introduction to Eminus Mirus, this is an M level 1 class, but it's tailored a little bit more to people who've practiced M before, in the sense that I'm not going to go over my credentials. I'm not going to go over the history of M. You can watch the first M level 1 video that has been posted for over a decade now, and it's there. So you can go over those details. It allows me to skip, 20 minutes of conversation and just go into other elements of theory here. So if you are new to M, this is your first day, please watch that other video, at least the portion about who I am, where this all comes from. The nutshell version is I am now close to 25 years in Chinese medicine, and everything in M has really been constructed out of Chinese medicine. But I will get into that in a moment. But there are basically 3 fundamentals that I didn't talk about originally, but in retrospect, I wish I had. And I think that you really need to kind of absorb these to be able to move to the next level if you're feeling held back. And the first one is energy is real. We call energy chi. Chi is real. And I was trained with other acupuncturists. We had different styles of acupuncture. We had Japanese and Chinese, and we had Chinese herbal medicine. We had Korean acupuncture. Not everyone, even in Chinese medicine, is taught to really think about energy as real. But if you accept that everything that is constructed of your experience is literally made out of energy, that will allow you to take a jump forward in thinking about things outside of cells, molecules, tissues, the way we've been trained to think as people in a modern era. It's holding us back to a certain degree to only think. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't think about that stuff. It's that you shouldn't only think about things from this Western perspective, because energy is constructing everything. So chi is real. Number two, universal chi is real. And what I mean by that, when I first taught about M level 1 eons ago, I talked about how universal chi is like a database of all energy at all moments in time, that it has a knowledge of what state energy is in at every moment in time, and all forward and backward in time. And that is a great analogy to some degree, but it also kind of holds people back into thinking about this is something that has predated us, and it exists and will be here far longer than we are here. And that this is not just that it's real, but that it is an ally to us in our work. It is a bridge in our ability to treat other people, because we're not literally putting anything like an acupuncture needle in someone or an herb. So accepting that not just that universal chi is real, and that it is something that is bigger than us, which I think there's no intent, and you should, if you're new to M, you should understand this. I underline this everywhere, that this is not a theological conversation. I'm not going to bring in conversation about God. You can bring in God. You can bring whatever your belief system is to M. I have no judgment about it. The community has no judgment about it. But this is not a place where I'm not going to talk from a religious perspective, because we're all coming from different perspectives. But that doesn't mean that there can't be intelligences greater than our own. And that is, I think, something that people, we look at ants and we look at bats, and they have different abilities than us, and it's pretty incredible. We have different abilities than ants, and it's pretty incredible. There are other things out there that we don't necessarily fully understand, and one of them may be universal chi, which has this ability to understand all energy in all states at every moment in time, and to be able to change them like that in anybody we ask to have it changed in. And it's incredible. And I think that the modern analogy might not be a database. It might be the chat GPT perspective, that we have a communication, we have a interaction, that there is intelligence that we're communicating with. And I think that the first time I taught M level 1, I really tried to sidestep this perspective of intelligence and just talk about it as a database, because I thought that I would turn people off by having this perspective that you have an ally in this process. And I realized I made a mistake, because an ally is there to help you. And if you believe that universal chi is real and an ally, then perhaps you'll be more open to utilizing universal chi for information back and forth. And in fact, in M level 3, we have techniques to communicate with universal chi. How many people have used the M conversation in M level 3 by show of hands? All right, I'm just going to keep your hands up as I scroll through here. So yeah, we've got more hands up. So you can see we have a lot of people who have used M conversation, which is this methodology of more directly communicating with universal chi. But we take little baby steps to get there. First, there's M level 1, where you don't need to learn any theory. All you have to do is make requests. Please send M to somebody to treat something. That's all we're doing in M level 1. M level 2, you get a little bit more theory about universal chi. M level 3 and beyond, you get even more access to figuring out how to utilize your ally. But if you start off realizing you have an ally, you won't feel as alone. And I think that a lot of people in M, when they start off, feel very alone, especially if you happen to be learning M, not in a community Like in Rochester, we have a lot of practitioners. In Boston area, we have a lot of practitioners, but you may be in Syracuse, or you may be in Myrtle Beach, and you may not have a lot of resource among the people around you. But you do online in the Facebook fan page, you do online if you connect to other people and ask them to be a teammate in this process. And I certainly encourage this, and everyone who's been in M for a long time knows I always encourage people to work with each other. You'll learn faster. All right, and then the last thing I mentioned this a moment ago, is that sense of feeling worthy and capable, that this is for you, and that I want you to take, really absorb this understanding that this is really for you. I have a moment of silence, a pregnant pause there for you to absorb that. M is here for you as a practitioner, to heal yourself, to heal others if you have that opportunity and interest, but it's here for you. It's an opportunity, and take advantage of it. So those are, basically some fundamentals, but I just want to talk a little bit more about this idea that you can just jump right in, that there are we have two systems of M. We have the yin system and the yang system. The yin system is where you learn all that theory I told you about, those thousands of pages. You dive deep into it. Yin has no negative connotation in this case. I'm just talking about understanding theory. And some people, they're metal chi or they're water chi, constitution people. They love theory. They love specifics. They love understanding the difference between two treatments. They really get it on a like minute detail level, all the fundamentals. That's the yin direction. Not everyone in this space is going to go that path. And you need to understand that that is not what Universal Chi wants for you. If you are not going to go down that path, you go down the path that is made for you, which might be the yang path. And the yang path is just getting up and doing it. And I don't want you to overthink it. I just want you to do. I want you to be like, okay, I have an ache, I'm sending M. Don't think about, if you're going to go yang path, you don't have to think about the levels of tissue on the body. You don't have to learn any anatomy. The more you do, the better, but you don't have to. You just can go get up and do. And some people are just designed to be active, be right in it, jump right in. You don't have to worry about the theory. I'm here to help you in either direction. And I know some people had asked me in M level 4 classes to teach a yang path for M. And this is kind of like my reintroduction to that yang path, is to show, look, M level 1 is the yang path. It's just a little bit weaker T than all the other levels of M. You don't need any theory, you just jump right in. There's only one treatment, and you only need one treatment if you're M level 3 or 4, even though you get all those curriculum books. So I just want to remind you that this is immediately how we started. We started the yang path. And there's and that's for a reason, it's good enough. And if you do that path, it's good enough. I happen to be one of those metal water people. I love the little details. I created all these books and these little details because that is my constitution. But don't follow my constitution if it's not your constitution. If you're one of those jump forward and see what happens, people do jump forward. All right, we're going to talk about that. Thank you for asking that question in the chat. I'll get to that. There are 3 pillars upon which M is constructed, and some of you who have gone through M level 1 may remember these. The first one is Chinese medicine. I mentioned I'm a practitioner over almost 25 years in Chinese medicine. Qi, yin yang, blood with a capital B, meridians, all that stuff. It's cooked into M in ways that you will not recognize because it's cooked in. You don't need to know these details of Chinese medical theory. If you know them, all the better. That's great. That just adds to your abilities to pull out different facets of your knowledge base. It's built in so you can use it. If you're a practitioner like me who's an acupuncturist, great. If you're a Reiki practitioner, you'll find tools already. I'm not a Reiki practitioner. It's not built in, but Universal Chi is. You're going to find bridges that will work for you. That is one pillar. The second pillar is feng shui in a very specific way. So feng shui you may think of as you put something red in the south, and that's going to bring a lot of fire chi to that room in the south. Maybe you put a coin in a pot, and that's going to build wealth, something like that. I mean, that's not really feng shui. Feng shui is energy and how it flows, how it aligns, how it is a complex construct around us. And specifically, feng shui in relationship to something called tissue angles. Basically, every angle of energy around you resonates with a specific tissue of your body. That is cooked into M. You don't need to know it. What you can know is that the first treatment ever constructed in M was just bringing balance to a tissue angle and just being able to apply that to every tissue angle I wanted, whichever tissue angle I wanted, I could apply it to. So these tissue angles, they're the foundational way that we basically integrate energy and the body. That they're ways that we resonate energy very specifically in, say, capillaries of the eyes, or connective tissue that's holding your retina in place. All that is built in. The third pillar is modern ideas of anatomy and physiology, because what's cool about M is that we're taking all this classic theory that it goes back 6,000 years, and we're introducing these ideas of anatomy and physiology, and we're not saying that they're wrong. In fact, we're saying, okay, well, how do we integrate what we've just figured out? All right, we know about the Krebs cycle, we know about NADH being part of the Krebs cycle. How do we add that to M? It's instead of being like, oh, I don't need to know about ATP and cells. Like, we can integrate any part of anatomy and physiology in M, every part of it. So if you happen to be someone who is blessed with a background in some form of medicine, you could integrate that right away. It's built in. That's the cool thing. These are pillars. Everything is built on top of these things, and yet none of you need to know any of them. You go that young pathway, you just send treatments, great. It's gonna serve you so well. Those people want to jump into the details, they're there. I will say, just this year, I took down the Fushi Wen website that talks about all the individual tissue angles. But the book is still available at lulu.com if for those people who are really into those details to learn more about the tissue angles. But basically, this is something I wrote in 2006 about how these different energy angles relate to the body. You don't need to know any of it, but if you're curious, it's available still in book form. All right, so there are a few concepts I want to just bring back to your attention about M. Some that you will remember, some you might not, but these are really core ideas about what makes M special. And the first category is the wow factor. And the wow factor is that M is like the iPhone of alternative medicine. It is designed to be super easy to integrate immediately into your experience. That Yang method that I've been talking about, it takes 5 minutes to learn the Send M treatment. It takes 2 seconds to deploy it whenever you need it. So super easy once you get the basics of that. Much more complicated when you are thinking about things on a more sophisticated level, like if you want to figure out specific treatments that will help a specific problem, say like Parkinson's, and you're trying to parse that out, like what would be a set of treatments to deal with that, then you're getting into the programming level of things, not the app level of things. But you can keep it just at the app level is what I have emphasized already multiple times today. M is also the wow factor. It is entirely based on language. It is a word and thought-based process. And that's because Universal Chi is your ally, and Universal Chi is there listening to everything that's happening. And when you say specific words in a specific order with a specific word at the very end, Universal Chi knows that you have just asked for a treatment to be sent, because it is watching and listening and able to process that. Even if you're thinking it, Universal Chi knows when you thought that final word that deploys the treatment. It is really cool. It's why it's the wow factor. It is something that is unique about this medicine. Of course, there's also, the cons of that is that language just can be tricky for people. You might say the wrong words at times. You might make mistakes with your language. And one of the questions that someone asks, what happens if you make a mistake? Well, there's ways to stop in the middle of what you're doing and start over again. And we'll get to that in a little bit. Another wow factor, when you get to M level 2 and beyond, with people who have given you consent, you can diagnose pretty much anything in anyone, down to the level of the capillaries in the eye sclera, down to the level of what organism is infecting the the left pinky. You can figure out these details because you can do that diagnosis. And level 2 comes with kinesthetic diagnosis, where you feel in your body what is going on in someone else's body. And level 3, you get all their diagnostic methods that also expand upon that. And the last, and I'm going to ask another question here of our classmates here, is M can be used to treat superbugs. And I remember when I first brought this to people's attention, I felt a little uncomfortable because it's kind of a bold statement from when you're thinking from a Western perspective of MRSA and MARCoNS. And I'm just curious, by a show of hands, how many people have treated MRSA, MARCoNS, Candida? There's a form of Candida that, keep your hands up for those people who have treated things that are considered superbugs in their practice. All right, so you can see I'm not making this up. Look at that. If you go through, there are quite a few people here. You'll see lots of hands up. Thank you for putting your hands up. And what that's showing you is that it's not like it's a magical thing that only one person can do, that this is a daily thing with them. Today, I probably treated five people for pathogens associated with MRSA and MARCoNS, these organisms that tend to get into people after surgeries. So it's not, though from a Western perspective, that sounds ludicrous. You have to realize that we're using a totally different tool set. And from this perspective, this tool set, it doesn't matter whether something's antibiotic resistant or not. An organism is an organism. That doesn't change. There are other kinds of organisms that are hard for us to treat in M. Some of you who are M level 3 know about hybrids, which are organisms that are kind of quasi different things put together. They've shared DNA. They're get harder to treat, but they're not impossible. That M is really great at treating infectious organisms, and that's amazing. All right, so there's some deep impact theory I want you all to absorb. And those of you who've practiced M before, I want you to take this class because I want you to go over this theory, because I worry that you've forgotten some of this theory. And the first one is that you are made, and this experience is made out of hundreds of layers of energy. Hundreds of layers, each geometrically smaller and geometrically wider than the previous energy layer. Hundreds of those layers, of which we only interact with the first 18 because we have no clue what we're doing past 18. We have no idea what we're touching at that point. When we go from energy layer 9 to 1, those are the energy layers that actually specifically relate to us as people. Everything beyond that is nothing physical. In M, we call those layers the spiritual layers. Actually, from 7 and up, we call these the spiritual layers because there's nothing physical. These are just the constructs that helped build the physical that we experience. And maybe we're not the end all, but at least that's where we are at. We are at what we call energy layer 1. And furthermore, what's really important to understand is that M can treat any of these energy layers up to 18, and that problems can exist in layers deeper than you expect. And that when you are dealing with someone who has a problem in a deeper energy layer, it takes longer to treat them unless you treat them directly in the energy layer that has the imbalance. I see some nodding because I think you're remembering this theory that you probably forgot a long time ago, that energy exists in layers and problems are not always in the most immediately accessible layer that you think it's in. And if you are more specific about energy layers, you may actually have a faster, better, more joyful response with the M treatments. Another piece of theory I really want everyone to remember, those who've been through all these other M layers, M levels, I mean to say, is the power in M comes with focus. The more you focus it, the more powerful it becomes. And you may recall my original analogy is that, let's say you have a problem with your circulation in your hand, and you send an M treatment to treat circulation in general. Well, that's great. You will treat the whole body, and some of that will get to the hand, but only a fraction will get to the hand. Whereas if you just treat the hand circulation, all of the energy that is part of that treatment goes to the hand. It makes the treatment stronger. So even when we're talking about the M.A.OM method, we're just saying, let's treat so-and-so's problem without going into any detail. Even if all you do is direct the treatment to a specific area of the body, you're strengthening it. You're making it a little stronger T. Otherwise, it's weaker T. And you want to have a faster resolution from your suffering. And so to have a faster resolution is to focus it. I just want you to remember that theory, that the more you focus it, the stronger it becomes. There's someone out there who needed to hear that today. I'm not sure who it was, but maybe it was you. The last piece of this deep impact theory I want to talk about is that you're not just trying to heal problems, you're trying to get the system to stay on top of the issues from that point forward. You're trying to not just heal a problem, but to help the body take over its own natural inclinations with M. So often what we're doing is treating specific problems, but sometimes the right approach is to be a little wider in a net. Like, sometimes you want to attack an infectious organism, but sometimes you've been hit by bug after bug after bug, and it'd probably be better to strengthen your immune system. Right? And once you strengthen the immune system takes over, and you don't have to send a lot of M. You just needed to get the immune system revved up, by way of example. So basically, our goal here in M is to help people come back to homeostasis and to trust their bodies will then take over and do the jobs that need to be done. But I just want to, before I move on to the next level, I just want to underscore once again, molecules, superficial energy layers. Cells and tissues, superficial energy layers. You want to go deeper than that. You'll have fun going deeper than that. Think of things as energy. Energy is constructing everything. And I just want to remind you of that as it's easy when you hear this in M level 1 and you then go forward and you go into all the details, it's easy to forget some of these very important fundamental pieces, which is why we've come back today to talk about M level 1 for those who have been M level 4. This is important stuff. You're made out of energy layers. Even atoms are made out of energy layers. Everything is treatable because everything is energy. All right, so my last category before I get into how do you actually use M level 1, is M versus Western medicine. And I used to say that sometimes M is as fast as Western medicine. I used to say that. Now I say M more often than not is faster than Western medicine. It can be, and more often than not is faster than Western medicine, but it isn't always. And so that's the downside. Like if it was always, that would be fantastic. We could all dance in the streets. But the reality is that you won't know until you apply it, unfortunately, to know if it's faster than Western medicine for you. Which is why when you have something to treat with M first and see what happens. See if it's that fast. I mean, literally, my children are now, they're one is 15, one is 18. Their whole childhoods, they've had falls and scrapes, contusions, some broken bones, and aside the broken bones, most of the time, within 5 minutes of a major fall, they were back up and everything was fine again because I was treating them for their acute injuries with M. And it could be that fast that they're crying 1 minute and the next minute they're up and playing again. It can be, and often is, faster than Western medicine. You know, when you take a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory, you have 30-minute process of waiting for that medicine to get into circulation and then start to have an impact. Whereas if you were to apply M, the process starts right away. And if you're having headaches, if you're having aches and pains, it's an opportunity. I'm not saying that you're being punished by any higher power and that's trying, that is something to like a spiritual level conflict. I'm saying you are in pain, treat it, see what happens. It's an opportunity to see if you can treat it really quickly. And I encourage you to try. I want you to try and see what you can treat in 2 seconds. That said, there is what we call the 5-minute window with M. And the 5-minute window is that because there are energy layers and problems are not always in the deepest energy layer, sometimes it takes up to 5 days, 5 whole days for you to start to see an improvement with them. That's because the problem's deeper than, say, layer 3, maybe it's layer 5. And so the trickling forward of the improvements, the balancing, the homeostasis is going to take time for that to all bubble to the surface. The surface energy layers 1, 2, and 3, that's where you'll start to notice the improvement. So you might feel a little bit of relief, but you will feel a lot of relief when it finally gets to the surface. All right, so yes, it can be faster, and I encourage you to see if it is faster. I'm not saying it's better than Western medicine. There's clearly great things about Western medicine, and we all have needs for Western medicine. I'm not telling you not to get Western medicine. Obviously, there are moments to get it, and certainly one of the important things to remember is that M is not an emergency medicine, but I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. Another pillar of M versus Western medicine is to understand that do no harm is built into M. Because this is a conversation with universal chi, our ally, built into M is this agreement. It's programmed into M that no harm will be done by sending out a treatment. And if a treatment would cause someone to die, have a stroke, have an aneurysm, the treatment is not sent at all. Universal Chi also knows the path of that person because it knows all moments of time. I know that's a hard concept to understand, but it knows energy at every moment of time, forward and backward. So it knows what the path is for this person. And if your treatment will actually interfere with that path, the treatment doesn't get sent. So it's not just safety on a physical level, it's safety also on you could call that a life path level or a spiritual level. That M is designed intentionally from the bottom foundational pieces to do no harm. And I can tell you, we're now at 10 years of M and no one has gone to the hospital with M and died. There's no one who's died from M, I should say. Some people actually have ended up in the hospital from M, but I'll tell you that has been either a funny story. So for instance, one of my students used a treatment that improves orgasm, and that led to unexpected back problem that ended up in the hospital. So, it could be a funny story, or it could be like a really terrible Herxheimer reaction, like a lot of organism was killed off, and even though drinking lots of water might have helped, they didn't do it, it wasn't enough, and maybe they have problems with the MTHFR enzyme, and they're not building, they're not detoxing well, and so I've had some people end up needing to have just some therapeutic care in the hospital, but it's rare. I would say that is like 0.0001% of the time I've had that happen, like so low as to not even be worth mentioning it, but I'm going to mention it. But the bottom line is that M was designed to do no harm. No one has died from M. M is constantly updating with latest anatomy and physiology. Because I'm still here, as long as I'm here, I'm going to be curious. As long as I'm curious, I'm going to be making new M treatments based on the latest scientific discovery. And so we're going to keep building this pharmacopoeia of what M is. And people who are M level 3, you have access to thousands of M treatments. And every year you get your little end of year surprise, wonderful package of new treatments that are created over the course of that year. And they are awesome, and they're there for you to take advantage of possibly some research that came out 3 months ago. that there's just no way a medicine has been made or a therapy has been made from a Western perspective to deal with that yet. And yet we can immediately integrate it. And, it's very easy to see, oh, they just figured out that this particular organism might be increasing alpha-synuclein to cause Lewy body Alzheimer's. Or is that Lewy body is Alzheimer's or it's Parkinson's? It's Parkinson's, I think. No, it's Alzheimer's. It's Alzheimer's. So if we know that, now that's news I just read this week. Okay, that means I can attack alpha-synuclease, and I can create a new treatment that maybe is just designed around that, and we can see, is that helpful or not for our patients? So it's constantly it's updating. It's very, it's designed to grow, and level 4 practitioners are given the tool set to program M. So when I die, there are other people who can make new treatments based on this methodology and share them. All right, and then lastly, it's really limited in terms of side effects. And I mentioned this with the Herxheimer reaction. That's probably the biggest side effect that we have with M. The other side effect might be that when you treat a problem, sometimes it goes closer to its root. So maybe someone had a knee problem and you treat it, and the next thing they know, the knee problem's gone, but the hip is bothering them. That you could call that a side effect, but in reality, you're just getting closer to the root. But you can look at that as a side effect. But to the most part, M does not come with side effects outside of the Herxheimer reaction. And I see here is. So someone asked, if you don't get a positive result within 5 days, how often should you repeat the treatment? And I would say, at what point do you give up on the treatment? So basically, one of the factors of M that it's just a truism is that you have to repeat treatments. You have to understand that M is a small amount of energy being sent to someone to do something. And when it arrives, the problem it has to deal with is going to either be smaller than that amount of energy or bigger than that amount of energy. And if it's smaller, then a single treatment will solve the problem. But if it's bigger than that amount of energy, you have to send more packets. You got to send more treatments. So some treatments you have to send 7 times a day. Some you have to send 12 times a day. As you get further in M, you can basically get tools to simplify that, make it faster and easier. But with the send M treatment, you could just send it once and see. Like that's M level 1, send M treatment, send 1 treatment, see what effect it has. If it improved a little bit, but not at all, send it again. If it did nothing at all, I would say, think about the problem from a different point of perspective and treat it again from a different point of perspective. See if that helps it. Different language can make a big difference. If you're having pain in your hand, you could say, please send M to me to treat pain in my hand. Or you could say, please send M to clear inflammation from my hand. Or please send M to treat swelling in my hand. Each of these actually does something different, potentially. So if you're not getting results, change the wording and see what happens. Does send M only get sent once? With the M level 1, send M only gets sent once. You only get 1 packet of energy that's sent per treatment. And so you would have to send it again if you want more packets of energy. All right. So we're going to talk really quickly about consent. Consent is a requirement in M. Obviously, if you have this ability to treat people, to even in M level 2 and beyond, to diagnose people, you need to have permission. Otherwise, it is not fair. It is not moral. It's not ethical. You can't just treat people without them knowing about it, except with a few. There are some exceptions to that. So, for instance, if you have a child that's under 18 years old, they're considered your dependent. You can treat your children without that asking for their permission. If you have, if you are the healthcare proxy of a family member, a legal healthcare proxy, you can send them treatments without their permission because they have already given you that permission, essentially, to be their special guardian of their health. So those are exceptions. You can treat your own pets, your own dogs. You don't need the permission from your dog. You don't have to ask for spiritual soul level permission or anything. You could just treat your dog. And if people give you permission to treat their pets and their plants, you're good to go. You don't need any special permission outside of that. But basically, if you don't have consent, and consent is as simple as this: can I send M to you? Can I treat you with M? I've learned a new energy methodology. Can I use it with you? It's called M. There are all kinds of ways to ask for consent. In M level 2, I talk about open consent versus closed consent. Just the nutshell version of that is, can I send M to you? Is open. You can keep sending M if someone says yes. If you say, can I send M to you today? That's closed. If they say yes, you have today to send them treatments. So basically that is how it works, is that you need to have consent. It's very important. John is asking here about signing informed consent, essentially. Yeah, so you don't need to sign an informed consent. As a practitioner, I have people sign an informed consent at my office in a formal way. It's not necessary if you get the verbal consent. Universal Chi accepts the verbal consent as good enough to go. If you don't, so consent is a door. Either the door is open or the door is closed. And if you get the verbal consent, that's good enough to open the door. If you get someone to write it down in your office, that's good enough. You've opened the door. So it's all good if that happens. In M level 2 and beyond, we talk a little bit about confidentiality. Once you start to get into the diagnosis side of things, then obviously you want to keep things between you and your patient. At this level, M level 1, you're just sending treatments. There's not a lot of information coming back to you, except if someone feels better, then you know that treatment helped. But you don't really know the details of what you sent, because Universal Chi is basically doing all the heavy labor there and making the decisions of what's being sent. That's there's the yang side of M. Universal Chi is doing a lot of the work. The inside of M, you could ask for specific treatments to be done where you know what's happening, and that could be really helpful for people as feedback. Oh, I saw this, I did this, you feel better, so we know this was the problem. But with Send M, you're not getting that kind of detail back. All right, so any questions before I move on to the Send M treatment? Yeah, Joyce, you want to unmute yourself?
I just have one question about the consent. Occasionally I get a phone call, excuse me, over the years that somebody's been in a terrible accident and would I please send energy? Now, obviously I can pray, I can send Reiki, but is it possible ever to have an exception for something like that with M? The only thing that I could think of, and I haven't yet ever done that, is to say Universal Chi, if this is in accordance with the soul's plan of so-and-so, would be the way that I would think you would have to, but I don't even know if that's appropriate.
Yeah, I hear your question. In fact, I get that question a lot. I feel like in the context of this class, the answer is it must be verbal consent, and you must get it before that emergency happens. Like that is an unfortunate thing. And it happens quite a bit that people's spouses unfortunately end up, say, in the hospital, but they never gave me consent to treat them. I can't treat them, right? I wish they had, so I could intervene at that moment. But from a different perspective, like your perspective is from the helper perspective, I want to help that person. From a spiritual perspective, they didn't ask for they didn't give you consent. That's probably a reason for that too. It's not easy for us to necessarily accept that. It's painful if you are like me, you want to help everyone. You don't want anyone to suffer. You have to also see that there's a story being written here that's larger than our own. And so that's where I'm going to answer that question today. Feel free to bring that question up again and say the M level 3 classes or M level 4 classes, and we can talk about other points of perspective on it. But in terms of like what is consent, it has to be verbal or written, for instance. Can it be thought? It can be thought. If that person is thinking it, Universal Chi can hear it. So if someone is unable to use their mouth, I had someone who unfortunately had ALS. He couldn't verbalize anything anymore, but he certainly could write things down. He could think. So that would be good enough if he provided consent in that way. All right, so what is the Send M level 3 treatment? I'm sorry, the Send M treatment. So I accidentally said Send M level 3 because every level has its own M treatment. The basic M level 1 treatment is the Send M treatment. The context of it, I'm going to write it here. in the chat is, please send M to person and their relationship to you to treat, and then you say a problem to treat. And then you say this very special word, and I'm gonna only put it as often. And when you are learning more and more M, you see a lot of treatments, and you don't want to be sending them by accident to yourself or to others. So it's always abbreviated as often. The full word is authenticated. Authenticated. It's a lot of syllables. It's a lot of syllables for a reason, because if you're like me, you make mistakes all the time. I don't know. I make mistakes all the time. And I get to that fourth or fifth syllable when I'm like, oh, yeah, I made a mistake. And I can stop before it actually gets sent. If you make a mistake, there's a phrase that we use, and it's called the words new process. And you'll see that this is a lot of authenticated new process. This is kind of weird language. I used to be a programmer. M is essentially programming within the context of Universal Chi to make it standardized. And so I'm stuck in some programming language here. But the word authenticated is great. It turned out to be fantastic because it's not a word you use every day. And it's very long, and you can stop yourself in the middle of it. But if you need to do a reset, you just say new process. And in fact, I say new process. I make so many mistakes. I say new process so many times. It is not uncommon for me to be in the middle of a conversation with my wife and just say new process. And then she laughs at me, and then I laugh, and then we move on. But bottom line is, we're all going to make mistakes. New process is your reset. And again, it's not the word reset. The word reset might come up in your natural language, but new process definitely is not going to come up unless you're saying M things. And then again, what is Universal Chi waiting for to know that something's happening? It's waiting for the word authenticated. If it hears that word authenticated, it looks back and says, well, what did you just say? Oh, you just said send M, which by the way is the name of this treatment. It's called the send M treatment. So it's seeing the name of the treatment, send M, and then you indicate a recipient of the treatment. And you indicate that recipient and their relationship to you, and it could be just you. So you send them to me. That's good enough. But let's say you have like 3 friends named Tom, and one Tom is, married to Betty. You'd say, send them to my friend Tom, who's married to Betty, to treat blah, blah, blah. And Universal Chi will be able to identify through your connections those people you're talking to. In my work, I do a lot of long distance treatments, and I'm often using people's email addresses as their their unique identifier. And I'll say, send M to this person, Betty, whose email address I'm looking at now. That's good enough. Universal Chi can identify it because it's a unique identifier. Or send M to Betty, whose telephone number I'm looking at now. Universal Chi can figure it out because Universal Chi is much smarter than we are. Send them to so-and-so, their relationship to you, to treat, and then this is where it's a wide open thing. I look at the send M treatment like clay. You can make anything out of this. You could send M, as I was saying before, to treat pain, inflammation, swelling, nerve pain, blood vessel inflaming molecules, plaque, improve circulation. Whatever it is you want to work on, the send M treatment can work on, and you will either be happy or not happy with the results based on whether that one packet of energy is enough to deal with the problem. And like I said earlier, just change your language if you're not happy with the results. Try a different point of perspective on it. That is what I do in my work every day, is whatever problem comes to me, I think about all the points of perspective I know about that problem, and I treat every side of it that I can treat. That's all I'm doing all day long. So I mentioned that my wrist was bothering me when I woke up 3 days ago. Please send them to me to treat my right wrist pain, authenticated. That's the Yang method of M. You don't need to know any theory. You don't need to know any anatomy. But if you know anatomy, you can be like, please, and you know that there are a lot of bones and joints inside the wrist. Please send M to treat all imbalances in my joint of my wrist. Authenticated. And here I'm just saying, please send M to treat my, and that's good enough when I'm treating myself, right? I'm already indicating who I am, my relationship with me, my. Please send M to treat, please send M to treat all my wrinkles, authenticated. You know, it doesn't matter what you, just play. This is like clay. It's meant to be played with. It's meant for you to see all these things that are bothering you about your own body. Treat them. See if they'll go away. See if that suffering, whether it's tiny or large, will go away, and see how quickly it goes away. See if a single treatment will make it go away. Play with it. All right, and I just want to quickly talk about a few things that can't be sent with M. The send M treatment cannot be used to send harm. Obviously, if it's built from the foundation to do no harm, it is designed to do no harm. So trying to hurt someone with M is not going to be listened to. It will be ignored. You can't send sexual contact to people. You can't send someone an orgasm or try to make them feel a certain way towards you in a way that is romantic. And you can't use it to stimulate recreational drugs. You can't use it to make someone high. Obviously, there are real ethical questions that this really poses if that was allowed. So it's written into the programming of M that is not allowed. And then there's certain contraindications when you don't use M. And the main one is we don't treat women who are pregnant while they're pregnant. And people are always wondering, well, if M cannot send harm, why would you limit it in that way? And I'm not limiting it in that way. It wasn't designed that way because I thought it would do harm to the pregnant woman or to the baby. It's because it could do harm to you if something coincidentally happened to that pregnant woman or the baby. It's really about protecting you as the practitioner, because you'll always have a seed of doubt if something bad were to happen. And that is not something that is, though it might be really helpful for that baby and that woman, what if things go south? It's not worth the sorrow. And I've had people who've really suffered because coincidental things have happened and they stirred them up a lot of negative emotions. It's not worth that amount of suffering. Though, again, you might be that person who wants to help everyone, and I get that. I'm that person too. There should be limits and things to make them better. And in this case, this is a limit. And I don't know if it makes it better as a medicine, but it certainly will make it better for you to have that boundary. And then the last contraindication is we don't use M as emergency medicine. It is not Western medicine. Western medicine is great for emergency care. If someone's having a heart attack, make sure emergency medicine is helping them. If they're having a stroke, make sure emergency medicine is helping them. You don't, in all other respects, you do M first. I want you to do M first. But when it's an emergency, make sure that Western care is coming at the very least before you jump into doing anything else. You want to make sure that they're getting helped by the people who are designed with the best medicine to integrate for an emergency situation. But it doesn't mean you can't help. It just means that the first call is not to Universal Chi, it's to 911. The second call that could be to Universal Chi. And I've had more than one occasion where someone has ended up in the hospital and I've stopped an appendicitis with them. And an appendectomy didn't happen because of M. So it can be used. There's endless amounts of time for a lot of emergencies between ending up in the hospital and actually something happening, where there's plenty of time, but if some bad thing is going to happen, they're in the right place for the care that they need. All right, and then I have just a last little bit here, and then we're going to be all set. And that is just to talk about what's going to make your M better. And this is going back to my M practitioners who've been doing this the entire time for 10 years, is language and repetition. What is going to make your M better? It's going to be language and repetition. And really, there's no difference between what you would do and what I would do, except maybe language and repetition. Probably it's just language, right? And I do the yin form of M, so I'm going into the nitty-gritty details. And the only difference between me and someone who's practicing the yang method is I could probably tell you what treatment made the difference. That's the only, Otherwise, we're practicing the same methodology with the same tool set. And that's really a great thing to remember, is that you have the tool set and it was designed for you. All right, so I just want to open the floor to any questions, I'll just briefly say that I will be out the week, the Monday of, I think it's the 27th of March, but otherwise I'm going to start up right away with M Level 2 next week, next Monday at 6. Yeah, the 27th I'm not in, but the next 2 Mondays are going to be dedicated to M Level 2 at least. If we need more days than that, we'll take more days than that. And I encourage you who are M Level 3 and 4 to go back to your M Level 2 curriculum and see what questions you would have me answer with the insights that you were bringing to the table now that you have gone these other layers. All right, someone asked, how do you keep track of M statements that you send? So essentially, the way I do that is I'm taking notes. I mean, as a practitioner, I'm just, that is my life, is just taking endless amounts of notes. And I tend to say the same phrases over and over again so that my language, it just simplifies things. If for every problem that I'm going to treat, I just have the same language that I kind of turn to. But sometimes I change the language if I don't think it's working. But to the most part, I'm using the same language. And then I'm taking, fastidious notes about what I'm specifically working on. And if you are just a lay practitioner working on yourself and other people, you could do that, but you don't have to. You could just play around with it and remember what you remember and just try new things. If you are a practitioner and doing this on a professional level, you're going to want to do those notes. That is part of your job description, is to have that, elements of that. So you know what you did, so you know what you can improve upon, or what you need to repeat or reinforce. So that would be my answer to that. Any other questions among our group here? And am I going to add these videos to watch on the website? That is my plan. We'll see how it all works out here. That is my plan, is to add these videos online so you can go through them again. But we already have so many hours of video online. And if you haven't watched any of the videos that are already there and you're at an M level that has lots of videos, definitely go through them. You'll hear me say slightly different things every time because I'm a little loony that way, so you'll get different details. Okay, so someone's asking if they need a separate consent form for M versus other modalities. You need to add M into that form, or the answer is yes. If your form says, can I treat you with energy medicine, and it's kind of vague like that, then maybe you can get away. I think you probably could get away with that. But you want to add Eminus Mirus to your form. That would be better for you, I think. Just to be clear, so that there's no question about it. I mean, it's clearly designed that you need consent for M in the design of it. So better to have clarity. That was a good question. Any other questions? Yeah, Joyce?
I just have one comment. Excuse me, you started talking right away at the beginning about older people saying, oh, this is so awful, and use the phrase, people need to not realize that they're being punished for something. I want to just say, as a nurse, the most common comment I heard over all the decades I practiced was, so much for the golden years, as people were really sick. And what I did find is, when I say to people, that's the most commonly used phrase I've ever heard, you're not alone, it somehow reassures people that they're not being punished. And I just noticed that enough over the years that I share that with you. And I use that even when people are younger, when they say so much for this or so much for that, because I think we've all been trained that we're going to be punished if we don't get it right. And there's that kind of lurking, especially when people get older and things are breaking down.
Absolutely. There's so much solace in knowing you're not alone. which is also why I brought up today this idea that you are not alone as a healer, that you are in a team with, at the very least, universal chi, and you all could be in a team together. Like everyone could be finding their people who are their teammates, but you're never alone. And that's why I brought it up today, because it's so powerful of a message, like you said, to hear that and to know you're not suffering alone and that other people have been through it also means that there are other paths through it. People have found paths through it, right? That when you're alone, it seems like a very dark, black lake in front of you where there's no light and you can't see it. But when other people have already walked that path, there are lights along the lake. You see the path to follow, and it opens up a whole lot more hope.
Also, an awful lot of people don't look as sick or having like as much trouble as they are having. And then if you don't know that, you look at somebody else who's got maybe the same condition you have and you think they're not having a problem, but you don't really know what they're really going through unless you've talked to them, and people don't get that.
Yep, everyone is suffering. That is, little or large, everyone has suffering, 100%. So do you have to say all treatments out loud? No, that is the beautiful thing, is the universal chi is listening also to the thoughts. So you can say it in your head. I say it out loud in my office, and there's two reasons for it. One is I'm really terrible at saying it just in my head. I even when I try to say it in my head, I find myself talking. And two, for my patients who are here in my clinic, they are hearing me work as I go, so they know something is happening. They know that I'm committed to the process, and it legitimizes elements of the process. But I tend to say it out loud. You don't have to. If you are good at saying things entirely in your head, more power to you. And then someone was asking, how do I get someone to link with? So if you are on the Facebook fan page for M level 1 has one, M level 2, M level 3 and 4, then that is where you should post, hey, I'm in so-and-so town. Do people want to get together? I know that there are people who've made groups in I think the Boston area. So there are different kind of like support groups that have been created for practitioners working with other practitioners. And like I said at the beginning, it's clear that there is like the fast way of learning M, and then there's the slow way of learning M. The fast way is when you do it together. People working with people build confidence so much faster. And the confidence of this is real, universal chi is real, you are worthy and capable. All that comes faster when you are working with someone else who is like, hey, look at this in me. And you're like, oh, I totally see that. Okay, treat it in me. I treated it. Oh my gosh, I feel so much better. That is going to feed the growth much faster than if you are alone in your room and you're treating yourself, which is fine. That is great. I want you to do that. But you're going to learn slower if you're not willing to have someone to bounce off against. I very much recommend that. Do you tell your patients the meaning of what you say out loud? No, I just tell people I'm using medical qigong essentially, because that is really what M is, medical qigong. I mean, it is a method of moving energy based on Chinese medicine essentially. So when people want to know more, I tell them more. People who are really interested, they get a lot of detail. But most people, they don't need all that detail. They just want to know that it is something that is based on principles that are deeper than myself, right? And those pillars of foundation that I talked about, those are, 6,000 years old there, 3,000 years old there, modern anatomy and physiology is over 100 years old at least, So there are pillars here that we're built on that are very confidence building. But I'm always happy to tell people more about M. Is the Zoom link, is this the same Zoom link for next week? I don't think so. I will find out about that. I'm afraid I will post something online about that. I might be able to recycle it. We'll see. All right, well, I want to thank you all. This was a fantastic experience to bring you back to live classes. And I encourage you, those people who are M level 2 and higher, to show up next week. And if you have questions or comments or recommendations for things that will really pull out the material for you, I want to hear them. And we're going to have a lot of fun. This is going to be a fun year for those who are interested in diving into more of the yin side where we will go into those details. But each session, I will also go through the yang side of practicing M. So that each session, we won't leave that out. So you could hear how to do it with the least amount of theory. Sound good?
Thank you.
All right. All right. Thank you. Great to see you all.
Thank you.
Thank
Have
you.
Thank
a
you so
wonderful
much.
week. My pleasure. Be
Thank
well.
you.
Great.
Bye-bye.
Nice to see you, Ethan.
Nice to see you all. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Fantastic.